Morning. Man, I feel like I'm floating after an introduction like that. Thank you, Corey. That was incredible. So oftentimes when people hear the title giftology, or they hear that we do these high-end gifts or you experience gifts, there's an automatic assumption that well, John, you must have grown up in the right neighborhood. Maybe you hung out with the right people. Maybe you grew up in New York or LA. That's where you learned these high-end gift strategies, and a lot of times people check out. I had the opportunity to speak to a big group of CFOs within the last couple months. And I remember the introduction, the guy came up and was like, game-changing gift strategy. And when I walked up, there was about 100 CFOs in the room, and every one of them, like in unison, crossed their arms, and the oxygen got sucked out of the room. It was like, and there was like poker face. Like, seriously, guy, you're gonna talk about game-changing gift strategy? Like, gratitude as a competitive advantage, that's your big idea? So I had my work cut out for me. So before I dive into my message and my big idea around giftology, I want to take you back a little bit to where I grew up. I had the opportunity to hear Dan's message, which I'm an Ohio boy. So I didn't grow up on either of the coasts. Any Midwest people in the house here? Awesome. Any Ohio outside of Dan? Yes, there's some Buckeyes. So I grew up in Ohio, Central Ohio, one of 6 kids, doing one of the more sexy things on the planet every day before I went to school. I get to go milk goats. It's pretty awesome, going to school with like crap on your boots. Like, I was that kid. I learned very early what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. I was like, this blue collar stuff, like we had a 1-acre garden. We heated our house with wood. I was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. Like, I need to get out. So I literally did not get one B all through school, all the way from pre-K to 12. I was like, I'm gonna go make a lot of money. And I didn't know what an entrepreneur was at the time, but I thought doctors, I think, make a lot of money and lawyers make a lot of money. And my grandfather had a business. He didn't like lawyers. So I'm like, I guess I'm gonna go be a doctor. So I went into school pre-med. I bought an S10 and one of those big 30-foot ladders. And I was the poor SOB. If you've ever been in the Midwest and you're like, man, it's like negative 20 degrees out and there's somebody climbing a ladder, that was me. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I fell off that ladder 2 times in 6 months. And I was like, this whole like blue collar thing just is not working. Like, I gotta find something else. So I started to look for other ideas, and I had a buddy of mine who was 6'8". He was a seminary student, and he was the antithesis of a salesperson, but he started selling these Cutco knives. And I'm like, Steve, you couldn't sell water to a person in the middle of the desert. Like, are you serious? Like, how are you selling these knives? I said, how much are they? And he said, some of the sets are like $2,000. I'm like, $2,000? Are you insane? He's like, I know, I'm suck at sales, but they keep buying them. I'm like, if Steve Wiggers can do it, I can try. So I literally went into the interview, wore my glasses to look smarter. I wore the one tie I had, no lie. I was pouring with sweat because I wasn't sure if I was gonna get hired. I was that nervous, I was that green. Fortunately, I got hired and I did 40 appointments my first 10 days, but my life changed. Not just because of this experience. Cutco is one of the best sales training programs on the planet, bar none. It's incredible. But I was dating a girl at the time. Her dad was an attorney. And he was the kind of attorney that would take like 2-hour lunches. He was always chill. And he seemed to be involved in everything in town, in the small country town. You know, in the oil wells, the banks. And when you're poor, you notice when people are radically generous. And Paul was that radically generous person. And I was like, Paul, you're crazy. Like, he would find, for example, like deals on noodles. He'd buy a semi-load of noodles, and everybody at church the next Sunday, all 200 people, would end up with like a year's supply of noodles. I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, Paul, that was 20 grand at least in noodles. Why would you do that? He got this smile on his face. He said, John, did you see their smiles? I'm like, even the most evil person on the planet would smile if they got 20 cases of noodles. Like, Paul, are you? He's like, I know, but that's just who I am. So I work up the courage after I'd already pitched my girlfriend's dad knives for himself, and he'd bought a set for his 3 unmarried daughters, and I'm pitching him again because I'm like, maybe he'll give away pocket knives. All of his clients are men, they're CEOs of these companies. Maybe at the holidays he'll give pocket knives. So before church, I work up the courage, I'm sweating again. I'm like, Paul, would you consider these pocket knives? And he said, I would, but what about the paring knives? Could I engrave those? And I'm sure I had this like deer in the headlights look like, you're gonna give grown men, CEOs of multi-million or $100 million companies, a kitchen tool? Are you crazy? I'm like, Paul, you know I'm desperate. I'm pitching you again for the second time in 2 weeks. Like, but why? He was 60 at the time, salt and pepper hair. He leans back in his chair. He said, John, in 35 years of business, the reason I have more deal flow, referrals, the reason everybody loves me in the community is I found that if you take care of the family, everything else in business takes care of itself.